I couldn't work for another record sleeve design company. I couldn't work for another record company. I couldn't be an art director in a company other than this. I'd buy Cocktail Twins records, Colourbox records. I like the idea of having them in my house against the wall with my rendition, my visual rendition of that music inside of them. This is personal. It is as personal as that. It's not the only way. It's not a business.
Just how important do you think the label and the cover is as far as selling a record goes?
To physically selling it, it's important to a very small minority of people who aren't already aware of 23 Envelope and 4AD's work. It's vital to the people who are aware of their work, just because in the same way as we get immense satisfaction from improving, or all of us, that each sleeve that is done, feeling that yes, that is going even further, or just different to previous sleeves. It's important that people who have associated 23 Envelope with 4AD, with certain groups, that they see this continuity, this progression going on, and that it is still so vastly different from the mainstream.
That the first impression of a band is going to be what they see of the sleeve, especially in the independent market. That maybe they've heard the record a couple of times on John Peel, and then the name or the image on the sleeve is the first sort of thing that they see of it.
This abstract formal approach is what is different to most contemporary record covers, I think. Partly because of the nature of photography and the nature of typography and design. They're much more literal. You know, a logo that says the Cocteau Twins, there's no doubt about what it says. That it can only really be interpreted one way. And most photographs are much more literal. They're quite abstract in the artist's intentions, but in their own nature they're much more literal. So we try to get around those things by producing images which are more, as I say, more abstract and more like the conditions of music, more formal and lyrical, and which have more of a kind of emotional content rather than an intellectual one. You know, the Yazoo cover, which we produced, for instance, it was a photograph which I took in Paris, and Alison Moyer, when she saw the picture, wanted to use it for the cover. She picked up on those aspects within the picture. She liked the fact that it was much more abstract than a lot of the photographs which she'd been looking at in people's portfolios and things. And apart from that, the very fact that it was of two dogs fighting against this spotted background, there were Dalmatians against a spotted background, which made it very ambiguous. And the very fact that the title was called You and Me Both, she saw a kind of parallel between the picture and their music.
It's all vastly different, isn't it, from your work in designing packages for food chains, for food companies before. Just how different is that?
Yeah, it's another form of packaging. It's cynically, it's packaging of a product. But I think we've got a lot more opportunity in this to do something that's more sympathetic with the product inside, that's more sympathetic to the music. I've never been sympathetic to baked beans, but I've worked on baked beans packs for a lot longer time, but never been satisfied with the final result creatively. I worked for a mainstream packaging design group that had a name for innovation, that had a name for creativity or whatever, but were forever frustrated by marketing strategy, by the client, and would work on something like for the baked bean pack, for a baked bean tin, to work on that for 9 months and nobody recognised the difference between the previous pack. But it was just, I mean, it's a much more subtle approach that they're taking, perhaps. But I think it denies them a lot of creative potential. That I was working alongside very creative designers that would have all the creative ideas pushed to one side for the sake of the one that would sell. I mean, we never approach things from that angle. We never consider, well, people are going to be attracted more readily to this than they are to that. We always try to approach things that something's going to be more true to the product, to the record, to the music.
And baked beans have a very short lifespan as a product anyway.
Yeah, I didn't like the idea of working on something for 9 months and then people are putting it in the dustbin. I like the idea of people taking a record sleeve home. I think a lot of our record sleeves don't give everything away on the sleeve anyway, on the front and the back. That it's enough to intrigue, to want to take it home, to find out a little bit more inside on the inner sleeve and then on the label. That's what annoys me about these compilations of record sleeves produced in a book. The fact that they more often than not show just the front sleeve. Yeah, there's much more potential at the back. I think it's because everybody says our inner sleeves look better than our outer sleeves. I think it's because everybody says our back sleeves look better than our front sleeves. But I'm just trying to impress the sort of attention that can be given to the back of a sleeve, to the spine, to the label. Your name stand.
We know that you had a training in photography, for example, so is all the photography left to you?
Generally, yes, but it isn't as cut and dry as that as such. Some of the covers, it would be hard to say whether it was fundamentally a design job or a photography job. Some of the things which look quite photographic might have been basically a design piece which Vaughan might have worked on more than myself, or vice versa.
It's almost like one person coming up with the same ideas. He'll have ideas about the design, the typography. I'll have ideas about the photography. So I wouldn't necessarily split the way we work as if he was a photographer, I was a designer. I think there's a lot of crossover between the two.
Where do you think his strengths lie?
His strengths?
Yeah.
His strengths lie in... For instance, if I was on a recent project, I'd come up with an idea for a shot, a photographic answer to a graphic problem. And I've got a photographer, and he'd come out with his Hasselblads and his lights, and he'd come up with an acceptable photograph. And for the same problem, Nigel would pull out a 50p camera with a plastic lens and come up with something that was much more emotionally involved and had a lot more sort of thought about it than... I don't think his work has any precedence. I think that's quite a very refreshing approach to photography. That he doesn't hide any of the techniques. That if he's using a flash and it's going to bounce off the side of a car, where somebody else would pick up on that, and that's where he got the technique from. He just gets on with it. It's like a very sort of unself-conscious approach to photography.
I think the most important thing about our approach to record covers is that, and the most unique thing really, is that we try to achieve an image quality which is more abstract and closer to the feeling of the music, to capture the atmosphere and the more formal aspects of the music. You know, we rarely read lyrics and use that as a starting point. It's more through listening to the actual music.
What is it particularly about 23 envelope that you like, that you feel comfortable with alongside your music?
It just sort of, well, Von and Nigel just managed to reflect our sort of ideas and things visually a bit. It's much closer than anybody else could, I think.
Elizabeth, do you sort of have lengthy discussions over what the cover should be like? Do you have a lot of input, a lot of say on what goes on the cover of your own records?
We don't have big discussions, no. We just sort of, well, it's usually Robin will give them, he just needs to say one or two things to them.
Just give them guidelines, sort of try and sort of convey the mood. But I mean, they often sort of come to the same sort of thing themselves just by listening to music.
They actually, we send them tapes of the music as it's being made, so they actually experience that, and they like to hear the tapes, I think.
Is that something that will develop in the future? Because I know that they have big plans for video, don't they? Can you see yourselves maybe getting together in that field with them soon to work on other projects?
Yeah, I should think so.
There's talk of a long video, maybe 45 minutes or something.
We want to make it different to your usual sort of music video where it's just a compilation of promos straight after another thing. We want it to be a whole sort of thing in its own right.
There's plans to do a Cocteau Twins video stroke film that not from a pop promotional angle, but there's something that's more of an extension of the sleeves that would take a situation where we've taken a still from and extend that, make that move. Something that you can watch while you're listening to the music, something you could watch while you're listening to the music 3 times and not just once. That doesn't give everything away the first time.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have a bit more time to spend on shooting it as well, rather than a sort of 1 day, 2 day situation for pop promos. To get things really, how we want them. And again, as I say, more of a direct relationship with the group, in that, so that we get more feedback from them, and it's more, personal to them as well as to us.
I want to talk to you a bit about a film that you've been making for some time, because it actually opens up a whole new area for you both, both you and Vaughan, in that I know that video production is maybe a long-term project of yours. But going back to that film, just tell me a little bit about what that's about.
Well, it's basically about a relationship between a man and a woman, as is seen through the eyes of the man in his memory. It's basically trying to portray a series of events that, in such a way that it's closer to how an individual perceived those events as opposed to how it happened, an external reality. It's more of an inner reality. And so the whole film takes place, as it were, in the mind of the narrator. So there's various sections of...
You've had 1 or 2 bad experiences with video, haven't you? You haven't been too pleased with 1 or 2 things that have been released. And I understand that
Just the one.
Just the one? What was that then?
The video for Perla Junior's Drops.
And why didn't you like it?
Oh, it was just horrible. It was... It was sort of a promo sort of thing. It was done in a hurry. It was tacky, sort of worthless.
It was everything it wasn't
waste
meant
of film.
Everything it wasn't meant to be.
I mean, we talked to the director, sort of. We couldn't actually tell him what we wanted it to be like, because we didn't have an idea, because we're not like that. So we said what we didn't want it to be like. It actually turned out all the things just like what we didn't want. But the next one that we did, we had a good idea ourselves what we wanted it to be like, and Vaughan and Nigel got involved as well, and it's come out much to our sort of satisfaction. It's good.
Desespero por verte junto a mí, callar quisiera.
I want to talk to you a bit about a pet project of yours, this Mortal Coil. As I see it, it's basically a collective, a loose collective of different musicians. I was wondering where 23 Envelope fitted into that situation.
I feel that the sleeves that they've done, coincidentally, the two of the three sleeves of different Mortal Coil records have been existing photographs. The first single was a photograph that Vaughan had and I was familiar with, and when the single was done, then it was very easy to go to that and say that I'd like him to incorporate it on the sleeve. The design, the photograph on the outside of the LP cover was actually done for a shoot for another group. It was considered inappropriate, which I was really pleased about because we'd just started working on the LP. I don't know. I'm sure Vaughan didn't put any extra effort into finishing the sleeve because I was here every minute whilst he was doing it. But I think it was one of the most successful sleeves that he'd done, and it enhanced the very, to me, personal feelings of that record because he was here doing it, and I saw how much he put into it. I mean, we spoke about finer details of label, etc., discussed how it would be done. That was really enjoyable. Of course, I took his guidance all the way. I mean, just because I was involved with a record, I didn't want to start behaving like an artist and be perhaps temperamental about the way it should look.
You take an immense amount of pride in the music that you bring out, one would assume. Just how proud are you of the visual aspects as well? Are they a great source of pleasure to you?
Yeah, immense. Just because they're so good. I don't know of any partnership or design company that really is working as consistently in what is, I suppose, a non-commercial area. Yeah, they're vital to us.
Ray, if I could start off by asking you, just how important do you think the contribution of 23 Envelope is to your records?
Well, it's quite important because we're a group that tends to have no image at all. We don't like presenting people's faces and stuff like that, so it is very important to us, really, like for people to make a connection with the sleeve and with the record, but most importantly is actually with the record, because we're not interested at all in presenting our faces or anything, are we? Really.
Do you think then, Martin, that the visuals that they come up with are a strong representation of the music that you make?
Well, the visuals are something we can hide behind, which is the whole thing about it. We try to sort of make something we can hide behind.
Why is that?
Because we're shy. We're shy.
So do you think that 23 Envelope are effective in creating this barrier for you to hide behind?
I think for other groups they are, aren't they?
Mm.
But
well, they are to a certain extent with us because they're non-plus. We don't have our faces splattered all over the covers.
I mean, some of them, when we were first presented with them, the ideas, I mean, this one here, right, I mean...
But they are nondescript.
Yeah, it's very nondescript, and we actually didn't like it at first, but to me, it's grown on me. Anyway, but it's completely nondescript. This one, I think is his worst one for us.
Why?
Well, it did actually come out as a first version. There was our first release on 4AD, and then this was the second version. But he was too much stuck in his style. That's the thing about Vaughan, is that he has his lettering. You have his lettering there, and you have all those little silly yellow bits on it, and he tends to use them with a lot of his groups.
It's like a certain style that is Vaughan.
Yeah.
Which is good. I mean, it's good if Vaughan says to himself, I am someone who does LP sleeves or whatever, then it's good if you are that sort of person to keep a certain thing running through it. But for us, it's like we have to try and oppose that. We have to try and get him to come out of that, but still keep his whatever he thinks is running through his stuff. You see what I mean? So that's why we had a lot of problems trying to get him to do this.
Right, with this, I mean, I don't know whether you've heard the records at all. Yeah, I know, but I don't know whether you've heard the records. Right, this is, we weren't exactly pleased with the record, because we wanted, this was after this. Right, which we had a lot of trouble getting this one done.
I can see why.
Vaughan's actually, the idea we told him was we want something quite revolting on the cover, and you know, and that was it, and that was his thing. But I mean, to us, it's stuck in a lot more people's memory than other work that he's done.
Colourbox have chatted to us, and they've stated that the working relationship with yourselves hasn't been that easy. In stark contrast to your big areas of agreement with the Cocteau Twins, they felt that it's been a bit of a battle actually producing artwork that they're happy with. Where do you see the problem being there?
Very definitely. Graphic design is about communication. We're not graphic designers, so we aren't really very good at communication. I don't think we've communicated ideas to Colourbox. They haven't communicated ideas to us. It's a situation where both bands would deliver the music and we'd come up with the finished result. And perhaps we haven't responded as readily to Colourbox as we have to Cocteau Twins.
What about this then? The first cover here. There's a tail of a fish in there, and you were saying, Robin, that you're not very keen on fish. Or this particular one, anyway.
Yeah, well, it's there.
Well, I mean, that's one of our problems that we. I think that sort of illustrates one of our main problems that we talked about. The whole idea, the initial idea, was to have, well, listening to the music and the sort of the textural feel to it, and sort of a mixture of colours and things. We decided to set up a situation in build our little aquarium, and have a few colours floating into each other, and have a single element underneath all those colours. Are you still listening? There was like a couple of fish. So we'd been away down to Pattysea Park to find a couple of fish to be swimming about underneath, you know, to add a little bit of interest. And come the day when everybody looked at the shots, the fish became secondary, or indeed not wanted, and it was just the colours that were wanted, and the fish that we'd found, the fish that we'd fished, didn't, well, they died, because, well, what we wanted was, the way we'd introduce the colour was through car spray paints.
We didn't like that too much.
It wasn't because of ecological aspects, was it? It was because of the nature of these fish.
These particular fish couldn't live in car spray paint. They had to have water.
They all went on the side, you know how fish do when they can't breathe through the gills and stuff. They all went on the side and sort of just floated off.
Can we talk about this one? I'm fed up with this one.
Alright.
Now that's much more like what this one should have been like.
And it was all from the same shoot.
Why did you say that, Robbie?
Because that's more like what we talked about.
Yeah.
But it's still, it's wonderful. Look. Very good. This is very good
Thank you,
also.
Robin. Thank you very
This
much.
is very good also.
This one,
we wanted they got it right by this time. Same
We wanted
actually
the
goes
colours
for-
to
same
kind of
actually goes
merge,
for the
you know.
songs on it. We got
Didn't
them
we?
right.
Wanted the colours to merge.
Yeah, we wanted the kind of receding feel to it. You know, with the little red flower drop in the centre. So it's kind of abstract. Yeah.
Obscure for obscure sake.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people might argue that, it is very hard to analyse your own work. I mean, I know you must hate doing it, but a point that the colour folks were making was that, it does tend to get a little bit over-pretentious and a bit too precious sometimes.
Yeah, they've been drinking a lot there.
Yeah. So what do you think sets apart 23 Envelope from your average, everyday record designer, Robin?
I think if you look at the product or whatever, with most record designers and sleeves and things, you can look at them and say, oh, looks sort of late 70s and everything. The 22 Envelope things seem sort of timeless. You can't really tell where they're from or when they're from.
How do you react to people that maybe accuse you of being pretentious or precious about what you do? Because obviously you have to pay a lot of attention to detail. It's your job to. And yet, of course, that provokes quite strong criticisms often from people that maybe not always appreciate visual imagery, that, you're being much too pretentious and precious about what you do.
I think there's quite a difference between the words pretentious and precious. The precious aspect is the kind of thing that Colourbox would criticise us for. They'd say we were too precious about our approach. But I think if you look at the finished sleeves, I don't think they appear. A lot of them appear particularly precious in terms of. To me, a preciousness implies some kind of more analytical, logical series of steps rather than a kind of intuitive, spontaneous approach. And I think the kind of images that we produce obviously have that in them, because you can't break them down into any particular structure or how they've emerged.
That it's irrational, that it's whimsical, that it's everybody else's interpretations that are as relevant as ours.
That is the very reason why we don't in fact produce layout pads with ideas in originally, because a lot of the things we like to try couldn't actually be explained in a little thumbnail sketch or in words initially anyway. That's why we're lucky here, and that the bands do in fact rely heavily on sort of faith in our...
yeah, they have a confidence, I think, that's grown up over the past few years. I think you've also caught us today trying to talk like the written word, and normally I laugh all the time, and I'm not as serious as this about things.
We're not really used to trying to verbalise what we do in images, really. Look, I can smile.